This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to another edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, the Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. I'm Ron Stutz. Logan, hey, it's great to be with you. Hope you've had a great week.
Yeah, I've had a great week, doing awesome today. Another day here on the radio to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is financials and retirement planning. So looking forward to this next hour.
Well, it's one of my favorite times of the week when we get together and talk about all these things that people need to be concerned about when getting to and through retirement. And a very important phone number, one that I've said so many times that I end up saying it in my sleep sometimes. You can ask my wife. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call for Regari Financial in Southern California. Offices in Hemet and Redlands. Again, that number is 888-823-PLAN. I will repeat that number many times during the show today because it is so important. Hey, Logan, I'm wondering if you saw this story out of Boise, Idaho. A man was recently walking his dog in kind of a rural neighborhood. He saw some movement in a pile of brush, and upon closer inspection found out that it was a 3.5-foot-long alligator. The alligator was captured successfully by the Idaho Fish and Game Commission, but officials are quite perplexed as to how an alligator ended up in Boise, Idaho in the first place.
Yeah, I don't live in Idaho, but the first thing when you said that, I was kind of like, I wouldn't think that they would get even close to alligator territory there. So yeah, no. That's funny. Must have been somebody's transplant or pet at one point, and it got loose and nobody wanted to claim it.
Oh my goodness, that would
that's
be
crazy.
Kind of scary, even though that's kind of a small alligator as alligators go.
Yeah.
And if you live in Florida or somewhere where they have these things all the time, it wouldn't be a big deal. But, man, if I'm out walking my dog, and particularly at night, if I see a 3.5-foot-long alligator, it's going to be a little terrifying, Well,
yeah, especially if you're not expecting to see that. You're probably looking for, out there, I don't know, maybe like coyotes or mountain lions, bears, something of that sort. All of a sudden you see an alligator. That would definitely catch you off guard.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, let's talk about mutual funds. We talk about that a lot on this show, and a lot of people think of mutual funds. A lot of people have them. They've been the most popular investment vehicle for a very long time, but that doesn't mean that most people understand them as well as they should. So let's discuss this. What percentage of your clients at Regari Financial own mutual funds in one form or another when they first came to see you?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like you said, off the top of the head, other than buying like an individual stock type thing, mutual funds are typically what most people know of when they think of investing in the stock market. And when I would say most of the time when clients are coming on board or when they're, when we're doing our initial discovery meeting and we're looking through their financials and doing our reviews, I would say it's gone down probably a little bit in the last few years, but most of the time you're probably looking anywhere from probably, I would say 60 to maybe 70% of the time they have mutual funds currently, so, and a lot of that is because most people don't understand that most of the time 401ks, almost all the time they offer mutual funds. Now, some of them have incorporated some of those exchange-traded funds and other options like that over the past few years, but most of the time, all the 401ks out there, a lot of the times it is in mutual funds, as well as if they have an older IRA or something they've had with an advisor for a long period of time, it probably is invested in mutual funds because at the time they were probably a lot more popular and more used. And again, you still see them used a lot, but definitely the percentage has came down a little bit. But newer clients that are interviewing the firm or we're doing our reviews, a lot of the times it is in mutual funds because I still would say it's up there with one of the most popular market-based investments.
Okay. We're talking about mutual funds here on today's edition of the Financial Beat. Explain expense ratios in mutual funds. What is that, and why is it important to understand?
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things we do in our analysis, and those of you that have listened to the show, came in for your discovery meeting, or maybe you're an existing client, you kind of know what I'm talking about here, but we spend a lot of time in analyzing what the expense of a portfolio is, and that could be, advisory fees or planning fees or fund cost, or as well as expense ratios. I think all of that stuff is very important when you're looking at the overall cost of a portfolio. Now, most of the time, I've noticed a lot of clients spend a lot of time on asking advisors, what is your fee, or what is this fee, right? How much do I owe you, or how does this work? How much am I paying my current advisor? A lot of that conversation, but you don't hear a lot of the time what is the expense of these funds. And a lot of the times, a lot of advisors don't talk about this because it's not something that is I don't think it's as known or as talked about out there in general. And what an expense ratio on a mutual fund is essentially is it is the expense ratio of that fund to be managed by that money manager. So every mutual fund out there is essentially managed to some degree, and they charge an expense ratio of that fund. Now, basically, how you can look at it is it's basically like an extra fee included in the cost of that fund. Now, let's say you have 5 or 6 different funds in your portfolio. All mutual funds, they can all have different costs, right? They can all have different expenses. And the most common form, I mean, I've seen mutual funds that typically are a lot higher, I would say, than traditional ETFs or other types of stocks or things of that sort. And I've seen mutual funds run anywhere from, when I'm doing my expense report for clients, I've seen them run anywhere between 0.5% to 1% extra.
Yeah.
So if you're paying your advisor 1% or 1.5% or whatever you're paying your advisor, you have to also look at, is that including the expense ratio? Most of the time it's not, because that's a separate cost. So when you add in those expenses of the mutual funds, it can get, as you can imagine, Ron, can get quite high in a lot of cases.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. I'm Ron Stutson. We're talking about mutual funds. Logan, if you would, explain loaded mutual funds. What do front load, back load, and no load mean?
Yeah, I had someone say that one time, and they go, that means they must be good, right? Like super loaded, like a loaded baked potato or something, like really good, right? I go, not necessarily, right? So when you think of loaded mutual funds, there's like a front load and a back end load, and there's also no load. Mm-hmm. Now, basically think about it this way, is a load is basically essentially, it's a fun word for commission or extra cost, okay? Yeah. So basically when you think of front end, that means a lot of the times you pay a front end commission. Now, this was very popular in the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, where you go into an advisor, they throw you into a basket of mutual funds, and then you could charge. They would, there would be an upfront cost, a front end load to call it, would be, a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5%, just to get into that mutual fund, as well as there was some continued expense ratios and sales charges on top of that. And basically the back-end load means you don't pay anything going in, but once you do move the money, there is a back-end load, meaning a back-end commission or cost at the end of that, right? So it's definitely something that you need to know if you're in mutual funds, how you paid. And I had one client say, man, I pay a very low cost on my mutual funds, but looking at it, he actually had a front-end load that he paid, back in the day, he paid around 6% up front at the time. So you do got to incorporate a lot of those costs. I think, as you guys know, listening to the show a lot, if you have, it's one of those things I'm a very big believer in understanding, the cost of everything and making sure those pros outweigh the cons. And essentially what a no load means, Ron, is that there isn't a no load commission on it, meaning there is no fees or no commissions on that product, but there still could be different type of mutual fund fees as well as expense ratios. So super important to understand that.
Yeah, certainly. And another thing that you're big on is making sure that people are tax efficient. And that certainly is a big part of the conversation when you're talking about getting to and through retirement. What are some of the tax issues that mutual funds can create?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is, for those of you out there, a lot of you guys, let's say, I'm not talking about IRAs in this one or 401ks, but let's say you had $100,000 and you put it into a basket of mutual funds. Some advisors would say they don't like the tax efficiency of that, and what they simply mean is mutual funds can be passive or active. A lot of them are more actively managed, and what that means is there's a lot of buy or sells on those funds. Now, what that would mean is there can be some tax implications to that. A lot of the times, if you're buying and selling, I'm typically a believer in that more passive is more of the way to go in a lot of cases, not for everybody, but a lot of the times, because you don't want to incur a lot of taxes on a year-in, year-out basis. So those can create some extra every time there's a sell or a buy inside that mutual fund. there can be an extra, tax kicked off, whether it's a short-term or long-term gain, that can sometimes, cause it to be a lot less tax efficient, especially when you're looking at the long run of those investments. So mutual funds can be less tax efficient than some of the other market investments out there.
Logan, exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, as most people refer to them, have become increasingly popular in the last decade or so. Explain the difference between ETFs and mutual funds.
Yeah, so the way I always describe, to give you guys a visual out there, the way I always describe both of them is essentially you're buying, small shares or fractional shares of stock, and they're put into that mutual fund or ETF, right? You could have one tracking more technology, one tracking, oil, whatever it is, and you own a basket of some individual stocks essentially in there. The biggest difference, I would say, with the ETFs versus mutual funds is typically the expense ratio we were talking about earlier, where, like I said, I've seen mutual funds anywhere from 0.5% to 1% and 1% plus sometimes, depending on the fund. Traditionally speaking, ETFs, I've seen them as low as 0.03. And as the average one could be typically under 0.5%. So you typically save a lot more money on the mutual funds, as well as you typically can get a lot of different styles, like I was mentioning earlier, active and passive, as well as you typically just have a little bit more flexibility because ETFs trade more like an individual stock compared to a mutual fund. So there is a lot of advantages, in my opinion, to ETFs with clients. A lot of the times when we're using market money with clients and we don't want to look at the individual stocks or things of that sort, the ETFs can be a great alternative, which again, those are exchange traded funds. So those are something that has become so popular lately with a lot of these different market-based investments like 401ks, IRAs, and things of that sort, as well as just traditional brokerage accounts. But they've just become a lot more popular, and mainly a lot of it's because of the more flexibility as well as traditionally the lower cost.
Okay, Logan, one final question here when it comes to mutual funds. How often, if at all, do you incorporate mutual funds into the portfolios for your clients?
Yeah, we're a full service firm. So, we do have a lot of different market investments as well as insurance and all the other stuff that's incorporated with our financial plans. But I would say it's actually pretty rare we use mutual funds. I do have some different type of private equity funds and things we can use, here and there for certain clients. But majority of the time, I just don't think it's typically we could do as good or probably better with some of the exchange traded funds or some of the individual stocks out there as well as some other investments. So typically we don't use those a whole lot into our plan. But, again, I'm a big believer that every client out there is so individual, and that's why we're licensed to use a lot of different sides of the business, like annuities, life insurance, as well as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all that stuff, because they can each serve an important piece to the puzzle in your financial plan. So I think it's definitely very important when you're meeting with an advisor or kind of interviewing other financial planners to understand, how mutual funds work and really understand the pros and cons to each investment. So again, if you're one of those listeners out there and you want some more information or trying to understand, maybe you have some mutual funds or you have a current 401k and you're trying to understand kind of the difference or what the benefit would be to possibly rolling over or looking at other alternatives, and you're getting close to retirement, definitely give us a call. Would love to sit down and spend an hour with you and kind of go into depth and see if we can't bring some value to your financial plan and bring some insight and some education as well.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember that number is 888-823-PLAN. That number is for Gary Financial with convenient offices in Hemet and Redlands. You want to have a conversation with Logan Sadler? That's all you got to do. Call and leave a message with your name and number. You'll get a call back, and then you can get on the calendar. Logan would love to talk to you either in a phone call or maybe a Zoom meeting, or maybe you might want to come into one of the offices. We call this a discovery meeting. You discover things about him, he discovers things about you, and you can decide if you'd like to work together. There's no obligation whatsoever, and it won't cost you a penny. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to get a good analysis, a deep dive analysis, as Logan calls it, of your financial situation. You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and the beat will go on in just a moment.
At the end of the day, no one truly understands your financial wants and desires better than you. That's why it's important to have financial independence. This means you can work when you want, you know exactly where your income is coming from, and most importantly, your finances are stable. If this sounds like something you want, well, text the word advice to the number 21,000. And Logan Sadler and his team at Regari Financial can provide you with their free guide on achieving financial independence. The free guide will show you how to create an action plan for getting to where you want to be. It'll explain how to calculate a financial independence goal. And it'll define what an ICE egg is and why it's so important. Download it now by texting the word advice to the number 21,000. Again, text the word advice to the number 21,000 to gain your financial independence today.
Did you know music is good for the heart? A study at a university in Italy showed that music helps promote a better cardiovascular system. But we also know that a sound financial plan is good for peace of mind. Keep listening to the Financial Beat so we can help you find a plan that both your head and your heart can agree on.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial. And Logan is on the radio every week with this show, and also has podcasts and his own YouTube channel. We'll tell you more about those a little bit later on. But Logan works with all three generations of some of the client families at Regari. Many of those clients have been with the firm for more than a quarter of a century. Logan would love to have an opportunity to get to know you, to have a conversation, to discover things about you. You could discover things about him. That's why we call it a discovery meeting. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. That's good for a conversation that's not going to cost you a penny. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, let's talk about coaches. You know, sometimes I refer to you as a coach because you certainly are a financial coach. And I think we can learn about retirement planning from some quotes from some of the greatest football and basketball coaches of all time. First of all, George Halas, the legendary George Halas, Chicago Bears, many, many, many years ago said, nobody who ever gave his best regretted it. You agree with that?
I do. You know, I think that's all you can do in life is give it your all. You know, if you're going to do something, try to be the best at it and give it all you got. But, you know, I think when it comes to retirement planning, it's not necessarily hard to find people who have lived very simply throughout their working lives and are now, you know, in a spot where they have probably a lot of money saved for retirement, and they'll probably never really be able to spend all of it, right? But, you know, it's something where you'll probably never find anybody that says, well, I wish I would have spent more over the years, because, you know, they'll never get in a situation where they regret having that extra money saved for that retirement. So, you know, it's funny, this quote reminds me of a client I actually met with just recently, and it was very interesting. She had attended one of our events and one of our educational events, and it was so interesting because, you know, she was 72, I want to say, and essentially she was getting closer. She was already retired, but she was getting close to that RMD age, which she had just reached, where she now started taking minimum distributions and things of that sort. But it was very interesting because she was at that point, Ron, where she had done very well, put herself in a really great situation, and she had a pension, Social Security. She was fine on income. And she had around about $400,000 or so in a retirement account that she wasn't using, but it's now time for RMD age, right? So, of course, she doesn't want to just give away that money. She was super happy to have it, and it's nice that it's there if she needs it. But now it was all about doing some of the more important things that are, to me, a little bit more that can make a really big impact long term. So we're starting to do a lot of different tax planning and conversions and looking at things a lot more in depth to not make her situation, you know, her situation was already good, but now we're just doing little tweaks and little changes here and there to potentially increase her situation and make things a little bit more efficient from tax planning and estate planning. So there's a lot of clients out there like that, Ron, that kind of fit into that, where they did give it their all throughout those years, and they're in a good spot, and I've never seen one of them regret it. That's for sure.
Okay, here's something else, a quote from the old coach of the Buffalo Bills back in the day, Mark Levy, who said, "Adversity is an opportunity for heroism." Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it is. I always say adversity when you're looking about the stock market and stuff like that and investing. It's really funny to me because there's two types of clients out there, or two types of people, I think, when it comes to psychology of investing. And when the market's all over the place, right, when it's going down and things are all over the place, you get one client that says, man, I probably should sell, and I probably should go to cash or go to a safe position. And, you know, that's a very normal thought for a lot of people when they see volatility or uncertainty. They think they should get out or sell or do other things with it. There's the other side of it where some clients go, man, market's down 20 or 30%. This might be a really great opportunity to get in or to be more aggressive in the market, right? So it's funny where adversity, it can definitely, to me, provide both sides. It does provide, typically people getting more aggressive or more conservative, but it's something how typically it does spark some type of opportunity to make change.
Okay, we're talking about famous quotes here from famous coaches. Phil Jackson, Chicago Bulls, won all those NBA championships with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and then later on was coach of the Lakers in L.A. He once said, "Your problems never cease; they just change," and that's true too.
They do. That sounds like a Phil Jackson quote there. He's very, very. He thinks of things a little more outside the box, I would say, than most traditional, not only coaches, but people. He was kind of a very, very intellectually sound type person, I would say.
Very philosophical guy.
That's the word I was looking for. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, he was. And that sounds a lot like it. And I think it definitely is true where I always tell people in one of our seminars I do all the time, Ron, I always tell people, I go, hey, I wanted to let you guys know that in retirement, you guys might not have known this, but your roof still leaks, right? Your tires still go out in your car, right? You still have kids might need money, or grandkids might need money, or you might be going through something, and a spouse might have passed away now in retirement. I mean, some of your friends are probably getting older, and you're going through that side of the emotional impact. So my whole point to that is that things still happen. Your problems are just changing. That goes from, man, hopefully I don't get laid off this week to, hopefully I'm healthy and able to do what I want to do this week, or hopefully I'm able to make some time to go see the grandkids games, or whatever it is. Your problems definitely are still there. Life is not perfect in retirement. People think sometimes that you're just going to walk away, retire, and you'll never ever have another problem in your life, and that's just not how it is, right? You have markets are changing, taxes can still go up, healthcare can change, all this type of stuff still happens, as well as you still have those personal and family problems as well. So it's just understanding and understanding that it's a whole new game, and you definitely got to make sure that you're in the right mindset for that upcoming next phase of life.
Boom, bang. I'm channeling John Madden here.
There you go.
You know how he used to make all those sounds when he was doing color commentary on football games on TV. But before he was in the broadcast booth, he was coach for the Oakland Raiders, and really quotable guy. One thing he said was, "The road to Easy Street goes through the sewer."
That's a
what
good
in the
one.
world did he mean by that?
I'm just going to kind of spitball here on that one. I think, essentially probably what he was saying is if you're going to invest in such a way that you're looking for substantial growth over your money over a period of time, it's probably not going to be sunshine and rainbows, maybe sometime in the sewer, as he was saying. It's not always sunshine and rainbows along the way. I always tell people, I think of investing a lot like life, and anybody who's been around for an extended period of time, maybe you're 20 years old, 50 years old, or 80 years old, we could all probably agree that it was not a smooth road, right? There's, you got different challenges and things that come up in your life, whether it's opportunities or jobs or losses to loved ones or whatever it is. There is all these obstacles that you're going to face, as well as with investing, right? People think that, hey, I'm going to put $100,000 in the market. It's going to slowly make decent returns. It's going to go all the way up. There will never be any bad or downtime or any type of volatility, and that is just not what happens, right? Yeah. Any of us that have had a 401k or an IRA over the last 20 years can probably attest that it just is a very volatile type of market. Even with cash, money market, stuff like that, interest rates go up, interest rates go down, right? It's always changing with any type of investment out there. So it's super, super important that when you're looking at investing, one of the biggest things we always talk about is understanding what your goals are. What is your risk tolerance, and building that comprehensive plan to make sure that your investments are customly fit for what it is you're trying to accomplish in your retirement plan to seek that long-term growth that you need, but also make sure that you're in a situation where you're not having too many ups and downs that you might not be comfortable with.
That's exactly what John Madden had in mind, I'm sure.
I think that's what he was talking about.
Exactly those words.
Could be.
Hey, I don't. This goes back quite a way too, but Chuck Noll was the legendary coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he once said, and this kind of fits in with his personality. He said, "If you want to win, do the ordinary things better than anyone else does them, day in and day out." And he was right.
Yeah, that's a really great quote there. I mean, I think most people find themselves most people are now meeting with nowadays find themselves with enough money for a successful retirement and didn't get there by receiving typically big inheritances or starting a business startup that took off and went crazy and they sold for bunches of money or some other type of windfall profit. Most of the time they get their money by faithfully saving and being consistent and putting away little bits of money every paycheck over a long period of time. And now they're in a situation where all of a sudden they blinked, and now they're 60 years old or 55 years old or 70 years old. And they're in a situation where they have done a good job and put themselves in a good situation. And now they're looking at their situation saying, okay, now I have some assets saved up. I have a 401k, I have IRAs, Social Security, pensions, all of these different things. Now I'm looking for some type of coach or advisor or somebody to help transition me into this next phase. And the one thing I always say about the next phase called retirement is a lot of the times there's a lot more obstacles and challenges that can come up and a lot more complexity with how you invest, because a lot of people, it's so important to understand that you had a paycheck the last 20 years or 30 years or maybe 40 years. And now how are we going to get that paycheck in retirement, right? We might have Social Security. We might have a pension. We might have a lump sum option on the pension. We might have 401ks, IRAs, all of that stuff. So how do we create an income plan that's built to last while utilizing tax strategies that can help us kind of control and maybe significantly reduce taxes over your retirement? So that's exactly what we do with all of our radio listeners or any client that comes on board, is we put together that full comprehensive plan that is built to last throughout your retirement that might be 20 or 30 years long, as well as looking at some significant ways to maybe reduce taxes and put ourselves in a more optimal time and a better situation for that next phase. So if you're looking for a good financial coach or financial planner to help get you through into that retirement phase, if you're getting close or maybe just started retirement, might be a great time to make that phone call.
Call Coach Sadler at 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Logan, of course, the VP, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Regary's been around for a long, long time, serving folks in Southern California. There are two convenient offices, Redlands and also Hemet. And by the way, if you'd like to find out more about this radio show, you'd like to listen to past shows and that kind of thing, we'll tell you how to do all that in just a moment here. But hey, call Logan Sadler's office and arrange to have a conversation. It's not going to cost you a penny and not going to obligate you to do anything at all. Get a discovery meeting for no cost, and the number to call is 888-823-PLAN. We'll have more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to The Financial Beat. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler. Stay with us.
It's getting to know you time.
We're back now with The Financial Beat, and one of the things that we do from time to time on the show is something we call Getting to Know You, and I want you to have the opportunity to get to know Logan Sadler and find out a little bit more about him. So, Logan, I'm going to ask you a tough question here. What do you think makes someone a good person?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Great question. I think how I judge somebody off of their character really typically is if they're a good person or not is by typically being kind, passionate, loyal and committed are typically, great signs that someone's probably a good person and not just faking it, but they probably have real good morals and good loyalty. And like I said, they're genuinely kind to everybody. You could definitely tell those are typically really good traits to who a good person is.
Yeah. And just for the record, I think you're a good person.
Well, hey, thank you. I feel the same way. All those traits I listed, I listed them after talking with you.
Oh, yeah, right. Hey, well, it's interesting to talk about things like this from time to time. Ask a philosophical question, you get a good philosophical answer. So, hey, way to go. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment.
We all know Congress has approved trillions of dollars in spending the past year with stimulus packages, infrastructure plans, and other programs. It's all on top of the tens of trillions of dollars of debt our nation already owes. Yet we're living with some of the lowest tax rates in history. Now, how long do you think that's going to last? Learn how you can prepare for future tax implications by watching Logan Sadler of Regari Financial's exclusive webinar, How Tax Planning Changes Through the 4 Stages of Retirement. Just text the word advice to the number 21,000, and we'll text you back a link to the webinar right away. Text advice to 21,000 and make sure you don't have to pay a cent more in taxes than you have to. To access the free webinar right now, text advice to 21,000.
Financial stability, relaxing retirement, tax reductions. Do those things sound like music to your ears? Then you've tuned to the right show, because here on the Financial Beat, we want to give you the tools to build your financial plan. So don't change that dial, because Logan Sadler has some information that will leave you singing the tune of a better retirement.
And the beat goes on. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. 888-823-PLAN is a very important phone number. That is a number to call Regari Financial. And you can have a conversation with Logan Sadler, a discovery meeting, if you will. And you can get lots of good information, and it's not going to cost you a penny, not going to obligate you to do any more than that initial conversation. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, Logan, earlier in the show, I mentioned that you have a podcast and you have your own YouTube channel, and there's some folks who may have just joined us who may not know how to go about getting those. They can learn a lot of things just by listening and watching. How do they get to those?
Yeah, you can head over to the Financial Beat, and that could be you can go to the YouTube platform. So if you're looking for more video content that is slower and more focused on individual topics, we have our YouTube channel. You can type in the Financial Beat, and it'll populate. We have great, between 3 to 10 minute videos on there on lots of different retirement planning topics and further education on a lot of those crucial topics we feel are important, as well as it's updated weekly with new content, as well as we have the podcast. So if you like the sound of this show and want to catch some other episodes on our podcast platform, you can head over to wherever it is you download podcast, Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, wherever it is, and type in the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. And we have over 75 episodes recorded and uploaded on there for you to check out at your convenience.
That's a lot of episodes, I'm telling you.
Yeah, we're getting up there.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, a little history lesson for folks out there. First of all, let me ask you this, Logan. You and the folks in your family ever play Monopoly?
I think almost every family has some Monopoly stories they could share, right?
Yeah. 87 years ago, November 5th, 1935, Parker Brothers released the board game Monopoly. It's been around for a long time, nearly 100 years.
Yeah, that's one of those games I just always had figured had been around since the beginning of time, because it's one of those things that everyone loves playing, and I definitely have had some good family heated rivalries over there with some good Monopoly games, and it's one of those things where it takes so dang long to play, but it is worth it, and it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a real investment in time. It's planning in the long run, that's for sure. Sort of like retirement planning,
It is very true.
Hey, let's talk about the 7 deadly sins of retirement planning. You shouldn't just be avoiding the 7 deadly sins in your personal life. You should avoid them in your financial life as well. There's one deadly sin is pride, and I know you see pride become an important part of a lot of folks' mindset.
Yeah, pride, I see a lot of people sometimes not admitting they need help when it comes to retirement planning, and I tell a lot of people that they are often shocked at how much more complicated it might get than you thought. And, men and women, I would say, are both guilty of this, where we think, I could probably do it myself, or I could probably just stay as is, or whatever the case is. And I had a story of a lady who came on board with our firm, maybe it was about 4 months ago or so, and it was an interesting story. She was actually a radio listener out there, so shout out to her. And it was funny because she was about 64, 65 years old, and she's very smart and very intelligent in in the financial world. She was actually very, very adverse and understood a lot of that stuff. So she thought I was just going to do it myself, right? And as things kind of got closer, she waited till about, I want to say it was about 4 months before she was getting ready to retire. And all of a sudden, she was kind of going through her Social Security. She had a pension that had a lump sum option. It was a large lump sum option of around $900,000, or she could take a payment from it, as well as she had her 401k with around $600,000 or so in her 401k. And she had all this stuff kind of going on, right? And so where do I create a paycheck? Do I take the pension lump sum? That's a lot of money. Or do I take the payment? That sounds nice, right? She had a lot of this stuff going on in her head. So last minute decided, I don't think I'm going to do this myself. And so she called a few financial advisors, and us being one of them. And we were able to kind of go through the process with her and show her the pros and cons to each decision, put together that comprehensive plan that is customized to what it is her goals and fears and her concerns were, to make sure it fit what she was trying to do, and show her how to get that next paycheck in life, and go over a lot of those questions that she had in regards to financial planning. And anyway, she ended up coming on board with our firm, and I remember her saying, once we put all these strategies out there, and again, a lot of these strategies sometimes aren't even available to people unless you're working through an advisor that's licensed to use them. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you know what? That was probably one of the best decisions I made, of going with a financial advisor, because I wouldn't have thought of half of this, right? So it was just very interesting, and you got to sometimes swallow your pride and understand that it's okay that you might need help in this next phase of life, because like I always say, this next phase is typically a little bit more complicated with rules and tax implications and strategy than maybe the previous one.
Oh, absolutely right. Well, that's pride. Another one of the 7 deadly sins is envy, and I know you've seen a lot of good examples of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've all heard of keeping up with the Joneses, right? I mean, it's one of those things where it can definitely get in the way of your retirement plan. I saw this video on YouTube or something the other day, and it was cracking me up because it was a short video, and it talked about one friend who they both started at a company together, and they're both like, 25 years old or whatever the age they were, and it shows them go through these different phases. And the one of the guys kept, investing his money and kind of living within his means, and got promotions and stuff along the way, as well as the other one did. But the other one always had a new car or a new necklace or new suits or whatever it was, right? It shows at the end of that short video, it showed the differences when they're getting ready to retire. And one was ready to retire, was in a great situation, had a healthy 401k, had, very, very little debt. And the other one was not able to retire, right? Because they had been living in that nice brand new neighborhood every few years, and they got a pay raise. Kids went to a very expensive private school. They were out with friends all the time on these, very extravagant vacations. And anyway, I definitely have seen that impact a lot of people's retirement. It's really, how much money you make, I find, is very irrelevant a lot of the times to how much you have in retirement savings, because I have some clients that make seriously around $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they have very little saved sometimes in comparison for retirement than someone that, let's say, made $80,000 or $150,000 a year, right in that range. So it's very important to separate your needs and your wants, and make sure they're in line with your goals.
Really is interesting. Some people have to have a brand new truck, cost $100,000 with everything on it. Yeah, and then other people are content to drive around in an old truck they've had for several years.
It's funny you said that. I had a client the other day, Ron. They literally just kind of were getting a little spendy, and which is okay. I get it. Things happen, but it was funny. They bought literally like in 2 years in a row, bought a new truck, and I was laughing because I was like, I think the truck cost him like $115,000 or something. Got a lot of this extra stuff on, a big old diesel, and I was laughing because he was around 60 years old, and I told him, you understand that you just bought 2 cars or trucks in a row that were probably more than your first house, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And he was like, he's like, when you put it in that perspective, you're right. My first house was, $60,000 or $70,000, whatever it was, so you're definitely right.
It's crazy. Hey, here's another of the 7 deadly sins. That is wrath. And I guess, in other words, anger. That can really mess you up too.
Yeah, it can. I mean, it can definitely really kind of cloud your judgment when it comes time for things. I had a person I was working with a few years back, and she was just kind of angry with her boss, and things weren't going great at work, and was just kind of in a situation where she got, I'd say, a little bit quick triggered, I'd call it, where she was ready to just kind of to retire. She was only 61, was going to work till 67 or 66. And she made about $80,000 a year, which was a good paying job for her. It was working out great. But like I said, she pulled the trigger, and they offered her a $75,000 separation from service bonus, right?
Yeah.
And so her being matched said, you know what, fine, I'm going to take it. So she took it and left, and she had about $150,000 in a 401k, and she was under it. She couldn't obviously take Social Security yet because she was too young. Well, anyway, about 6 or 7 months later, she comes in to see us for the first time, and it was one of those situations where I was looking at the numbers compared to what she made, making around $80,000 a year, and what her retirement income was going to be was, significantly less, and it wasn't enough for her to live off of. And I remember her saying, maybe I should have probably talked to somebody or thought this through before I retired, or before I got a little bit, angry or used some of that anger to separate or too early and stray away from a plan that she didn't have in place. So you definitely want to make sure you're kind of looking through the clouds and seeing the clear sky when you need to.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. Again, if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan Sadler, it is 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Logan, of course, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Wherever you are in Southern California, thank you very much for being with us today. We're talking about the 7 deadly sins and how all that relates to retirement planning. We've talked about pride, envy, wrath, and now greed. And boy, that's a subject that comes up a lot on this show.
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time, right? I mean, some of these people that are chasing very, very high returns, or maybe a fad or a new trend, and maybe they're going all in on one particular stock or investment to hope to make big gains because everybody else did. So now I'm real tempted to jump on board. I mean, we've seen this a lot over the last 5 years when you look at different stocks, like marijuana stocks were a big one a few years ago. Then you had the cryptocurrency boom. Then you had the meme stocks, right, Ron? I know me and you were talking about that a lot at the time, the AMCs and GameStop. I mean, all of this stuff goes in trends, and I think greed is one of those things that could really put an investor, maybe even a good investor, into a bad situation. So you want to make sure you're staying composed and seeing through those, seeing more than just dollar signs and understanding pros and cons of what decisions you're making.
Well, then there is the fact that you show evidence of being a sloth. In other words, you're lazy, slow to react, and sometimes that really gets you in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not putting effort and due diligence, and those are things you want with retirement planning, not procrastination and not doing your homework in advance. Those are things you don't want. So you want to make sure when you're looking at retirement, you're either working with someone that does it for you, or you're doing it and making sure that you're not lazy, because it's something where being proactive with retirement planning typically needs a lot of work and research and due diligence on your part to make sure it's efficient.
There's a certain thing called gluttony as well, and I know that's a lot like greed that we already talked about, but how do you explain that when it comes to financial planning?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of clients where maybe they have, I work with a lot of Costco employees.
Yeah,
where they have a lot of Costco stock, right? And the stock's done absolutely, fabulous last, 10 years. And so a lot of them rode that wave up. I have a lot of people with Apple and Microsoft too, and other companies as well. And it's something where it's very easily to, not think you're being greedy or not think you're not being diversified. And all of a sudden you wake up and you got a large amount in one of these stocks that's probably mostly employer stock, or it could be other stocks as well. But it's something where you got to really make sure you're looking at everything from a comprehensive view and understanding that you probably have a very big lack of diversification that could end up in a not so fun situation if not addressed.
And the last of the 7 deadly sins, pride, envy, wrath, greed, sloth, gluttony. How about lust, Logan?
Yeah, hey, we're all guilty of that, right? You need to make sure that your goals are realistic. A lot of us think, hey, I want this $3 million house, but you probably need a $400,000 house, right? Mm-hmm. We're all guilty of wanting those things, and hey, it's okay to dream a little bit, but you want to make sure that your goals are actually realistic, and make sure you're setting goals that you can achieve or that are doable, and not just look for things that might make you get too risky to try to achieve those. And create a plan that's really based on your income needs, not a specific net worth or just a lust you're after, like, hey, I need $1 million so I could retire, right? How much income do you need to retire? And that's how we can kind of build that out. So you need to make sure you're looking at those. And those are really 7 great points you brought up there, Ron, as far as, crucial points that could be deadly to a retirement plan. And we're big believers, as you guys have probably heard on the show, if we're building a financial plan for a client or a radio listener that comes in, they need to be customized to each person that we work with. And I feel every client we meet with has different goals, different dreams, different fears, as well as every situation can be very unique, based off asset size, risk tolerance, other complexities that might impact the retirement plan that get very difficult as they approach retirement. So we make sure with every client we're meeting with, or everybody that comes on board with our firm, that we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us, and it's a great relationship, but also to make sure that we have the strength in our retirement plan to help build a plan that they're confident in and that is sustainable into their retirement. So if you're one of those people that have been listening to the show for a while, or hey, maybe it's your first time, definitely time to make that phone call if you're getting close to or maybe just starting retirement. And maybe you're just in need for a financial plan review to see if you're, maybe make sure that some of these 7 crucial items aren't actually in your plan or affecting your plan in any way. So at our discovery meeting, you sit down with me, myself, Logan Sadler, at one of our offices or via Zoom or a phone call, and we can get that set up. And how it works is you call the number Ron gives you, and somebody from our office will reach out to you first thing Monday morning to set that discovery meeting and get you on your way to a sustainable and successful retirement.
It's all about getting on the calendar with Logan Sadler. And yeah, you're going to be talking with Logan, not with anyone else. He's not going to put you off on anyone else. Same guy you hear on the radio show here. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN. Call that number right now. Leave a message with your name and number. You'll get a call back from Regary Financial and set the time for that convenient conversation. The discovery meeting. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. And remember that at Regary Financial, they have great partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists, everybody who might have anything to do with your financial life. They can offer well-rounded guidance in all things financial for clients. Get a discovery meeting, no cost, no obligation. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler will be right back with more in just a moment.
What is your name?
I'm Arthur, King of the Britons.
What is your quest?
To get retirement ready.
What is the PE ratio on your portfolio's top grossing products?
I don't know that.
Don't get blown to bits by complex jargon. Let Logan help you over the bridge to a meaningful retirement.
And the beat goes on. Logan Sadler on the Financial Beat. He is the Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial. Offices in Hemet and Redlands, serving you wherever you happen to be in Southern California. And if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan, we call it a discovery meeting. You can call 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Logan's been doing this show for quite some time now, and if you've been thinking about calling, you just haven't gotten around to it, why not make today the day? 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. Simply leave your name and phone number. You'll get a call back from Regary Financial, and then you can set a time to have that conversation at a convenient time. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, Logan, great questions as always in the mailbag today. Our first question today is from Woody in Los Angeles. And Woody says he just discovered an old IRA that he had forgotten that he had. It's only about $15,000, so he's thinking he will just cash it out unless you have a better idea. What do you think?
Well, thanks for that question, Woody. Hopefully you're having a great day today. Good question. This happens a lot, and this is one of the things I'm a big believer in when we're building our financial plans for clients or going over a lot of those topics in retirement planning is to keep things consolidated, because it's so easy for one of these little straggler IRAs or 401ks to be left out there. See it all the time. So, hey, it's kind of a good day, I guess, because we found some money. Now, important to more directly to your question, yeah, there's a few things I would look at here. One is if you're needing the money, then yeah, you could take the withdrawal, cash out the 401k or the IRA, and essentially you got to understand, though, that is all taxable if it's in a traditional IRA format. So if you don't want to have $15,000 of earned income added on to taxes, I would definitely recommend the rollover option. And so what you could do is you could roll it over. It's already in an IRA. You can move it over to maybe your existing IRA or existing retirement accounts and have that managed or invested yourself or however you do things. or work with your advisor on that or us and get that kind of incorporated into the retirement plan, because you don't necessarily want to take a withdrawal on $15,000 depending on income taxes and things of that sort, as well as age. It could be some penalties or for sure some taxes involved. So definitely give us a call or talk with a professional before making that decision, and make sure you understand kind of the impact there on what is the right decision for you specifically.
Always got to consider the tax implications of things, and
It's always there.
that's one thing that Logan can definitely help you with. Next question here is from Rex in Marietta. And Rex says, I'm planning to retire in the next 6 to 8 months, at which point I plan to roll over my 401k. The current balance is about $650,000. I'm planning to roll that over into an IRA. I could actually do the rollover now, but then I would still have several months of contributions going into the 401k while I'm still working. So I then have to do another rollover in a few months. Is there a reason to do a rollover now if it means just having to do another one when I retire?
Yeah, great question, Rex. Thanks for writing in. Yeah, there is some benefit to that, and it kind of depends on the situation. I know certain annuity products or market-based investments or whatever type of IRA rollover you're doing with an advisor or managing it yourself, there might be some benefits to doing it now, right? If it's on the annuities or CDs or fixed income type things, there probably is some good rates and things of that sort maybe now that might not be as lucrative down the road. Who knows what the next 6 to 8 months might hold. Maybe if you're moving money to something more conservative, again, it's next 6 to 8 months, market could be up, could be down. So that might be a reason if you're looking to do something specific with that now. There might be an advantage to doing that. And a lot of the times we do this with clients, like I was saying, if there's certain planning topics we need to get covered now and not later, it might make a lot of sense to do it. And I always tell people the rollovers aren't that complicated. So if you're doing it correctly and working with a professional, it goes from one company to another, and then basically in a few months you just get back on the phone or submit the paperwork that's needed. You'll already know the process because you've already done it, so it'll be a little bit smoother the second time typically, and you can get that done. It's typically not a huge hassle. But if you're just going from, let's say, the S&P 500 mutual fund to an S&P 500 mutual fund, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference if you wait probably 6 to 8 months. But I do know if you're talking about specific planning, like I said, maybe income planning or mitigating some risk or whatever it is, there might be some big benefits to doing that now instead of waiting 6 to 8 months because, like I said, we have no idea where some of those products or investments might be in 6 to 8 months.
Rex, thank you very much for the question. Woody, we appreciate your question as well. And you may have other questions that you'd like to have addressed here on the show, or a better way actually would be have them addressed one-on-one. You can get much more specific, and Logan can give you much more specific answers. Logan, typically when you talk to somebody for the very first time, how does that discovery meeting go?
Yeah, what's nice about the discovery meeting is it's just a really great time because, again, a lot of those people are typically that are calling in or approaching retirement or just got an inheritance or have something major maybe going on in their life, and they're looking for some clarification, looking for some maybe a professional opinion on what they should do or maybe what they should do differently moving forward. And so at that discovery meeting, it really is a great time where we're able to sit down and really probably change things up for most advisors you've met with in the past, where we don't talk about product, don't talk about any of that stuff at the first meeting. A lot of that is really just getting to understand what it is you and your family's history is like, right? Or, how long you've been working, what do you do for a living, what are your goals? Are you retiring in 1 year, 3 years, or how long have you been retired? And we spend a lot of time really focusing on what the client needs and what they're wanting out of this financial plan, and really spending a lot of time getting to understand the emotional side of what they're trying to do, their relationship with money, and like I said, focusing a lot more on goals. And then it's really a great conversation, Ron, for us just to get to introduce each other to one another and spend some time understanding what their financials need. And then it allows us that time to really have a great conversation and then go back to the drawing board and put together that financial plan that is very customized to each client's needs, wants, and fears and goals, all of that stuff. And so the discovery meetings typically, Ron, just a great conversation. We ask a lot about investments, about risk, about your past experience. What do you want from an advisor that you haven't gotten, or what is it you're looking for? And so it's really just a great conversation for us to get to know each other before we ever decide decide if we got to do business together. We got to make sure that we're a good fit and that we're exactly what you're looking for. And if not, at the end of the day, totally understand. We're not for every single client out there. And as you guys, as the client, you want to make sure that not every single advisor out there is right for you either. You want to make sure you're finding that right advisor that specializes in what you need done, and that's exactly what that discovery meeting is for, Ron, is for us to just connect with some of our radio listeners out there and see if we're a good fit to help transition you and to help guide you into retirement.
Well, again, there is no cost and no obligation, as Logan just discussed. Why not take advantage of the opportunity? 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Get a good assessment of where you are and find out how you can get where you want to go in your retirement. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. Logan Sadler, of course, the Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial, with offices in Hemet and Redlands, as folks all over Southern California and a lot of other places, too, who count on him to help them get to and through retirement. One more time, that number, 888-823-PLAN. I'm Ron Stutz, along with Logan Sadler. And Logan, it's been my pleasure to be with you for a while today, and I know you're going to hear from a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Always a great time to have a conversation with some of you, and it's crazy because some of you guys just started listening or maybe have been listening for quite a while now. So always enjoy that opportunity, and guess what? We're going to be back here again next week with another show, and really look forward to it. Felt like we covered a lot of great information on this one, and looking forward to the next one already.
Join us next time for the next edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler.
The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for anyone. All information discussed is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of BD Financial Group and do not necessarily represent the views of AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. AlphaStar and BD Financial Group are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.